Hey, let's talk about the topic of injuries. That's something that can be very frustrating. I know a lot of times we're exercising, we're getting to a routine, we're working out regularly and consistently, making progress, and all of a sudden an injury hits you and you have to slow down or stop. And so there's nothing as frustrating as that. I've had many times when I'm training for a marathon and you get an injury and then it's so hard to keep going on there. You have to take some time to rest and recover. Anyway, so there's different philosophies on the best way to deal with some of these injuries. I've seen some newer data that suggest some alternative things, but I'm going to stick with the old school protocol, the traditional stuff. And so I'm going to use an acronym for this that will help. And I'm not a big fan of acronyms. Usually they're pretty lame, especially if they're more than 5 letters long. They're not very accurate, but this one's still legit. So the acronym is RICE, R-I-C-E. So R stands for rest. Obviously, if you get an injury, we're going to want to rest it. If you keep working on it, that hairline fracture will become a real fracture if you don't take it off, take it easy and do something about it. So resting could mean modifying your workout. So say, for instance, if you're running and you start to get knee pain or you have plantar fasciitis or something like that, then you might want to find a more, you could still be active possibly, but you might want to find something with less impact on those areas. So you might do swimming or cycling or an elliptical or something like that if it's still not aggravating it. So sometimes you got to get creative and you can still exercise, but you want to make sure and give that injured body part a rest. The I in RICE stands for ice. Ice is great when you have a strain or sprain. It can keep the swelling from getting worse. It'll slow down the inflammation. I've had so many sprained ankles in my life, and it makes a world of difference when I ice it immediately versus waiting for just time to take care of it and not doing anything. So I found that ice is very helpful. And in conjunction with that, heat therapy also can be very beneficial to help you recover. But just remember, you want to wait for the heat at least 24 hours after the injury, or it's just going to swell up worse or make it worse. So remember, cool it for the first 24 hours, and then you can do hot-cold therapy afterwards, alternating, and that'll help the recovery of that tissue. C in RICE stands for compression. It's funny, when I go to the gym, I see the younger guys I'm playing against. They've got cool accessories, things like shooting sleeves, nice jerseys. They've got $200 shoes, that kind of stuff. And then I look at the guys my age, and our accessories are stuff like ankle braces, wrist braces, elbow braces, and knee braces. Once I looked at all my friends, there was like 80% of them were wearing big knee braces. It's kind of funny. So as you get older, we're probably more susceptible to some of these injuries. We need to be more careful. But compression is an important thing. You've probably noticed if you watch professional sports, you'll see sometimes the guys on the court, they've got like a special compression socks or a sleeve or for their legs. One of their legs, they might be wearing compression on it. And that makes a big difference. It can help. There are doctors that will prescribe, if you have varicose veins, they'll want you to have compression socks, or if a pregnant woman with edema, they'll want to keep the blood from pooling. So that does work. So if you have an ACE bandage or something for an injury, that can help with the recovery process, speed it up. And then the last one is E of RICE. That stands for elevate. That's kind of common sense first aid if you have an injury, a lower extremity especially, if you want to elevate it to keep the blood from pooling. I had an experience again playing basketball. All my injuries have basketball stories with them for some reason, but playing basketball one day, I go up and get a rebound, I come down and my foot lands on someone else's shoe and it just does that roll and I hear it pop, and it was bad, and it was bad timing because it was 2 days before I was supposed to fly to Africa the first time. This was about 4 years ago. And so basically I had a really bad sprain, and I ended up flying on flights for over 24 hours of consistent flying. I couldn't elevate it. And when I got there, it was like elephant foot. I'll see if I can include a picture of it, splice it in here for you to see. Anyway, you can tell if you don't elevate an injury like that and let the blood pool in it, it's not good. You all know how good it feels when you get home from work and you're tired and you put your feet up, that sort of thing. So it can make a big difference. So those are the things: RICE, R-I-C-E, rest, ice, compression, elevate. In addition to that, it's smart if you're trying to recover. We want to make sure and get quality sleep and nutrition. Think that your body in those off hours when you're sleeping and resting, that's when your body's recovering and healing. We want to give it the building blocks it needs to do that. And my final thought is, if you would treat yourself like you were a professional athlete when you're injured, try and get it, rehab it, get physical therapy, do what you need to improve it quick instead of waiting just for nature to do it on its own course. It'll be a lot quicker, your recovery so much faster. we may not have the means, the money and the resources that some of those people do, but it makes a huge difference if you go to proper care when you get an injury instead of just ignoring it and hoping it gets better. So that's my little spiel on injuries. They're not fun. I don't wish them on anyone, but they're going to happen in your life. And when they do, there's a way to minimize the downtime and to get a quicker recovery. So let's stay away from injuries when we can.